As a person who himself wrote guides and later started to record some, I want to give you a heads up so you do not damage your gaming performance or, even more importantly, your fun levels in World of Warcraft. You see, most of the guides, especially guides about the action, such as PvP guides or DPS guides, are written assuming you're in certain scenarios, certain environments. If it is a DPS guide, when talking about your rotation or talents, it will assume you already have the best in slot gear and close to perfect raid or party combination. If it is a PvP guide, it will assume you have good amount of resilience, crit and damage depending on your class, or it will assume you are within your ideal arena combination. And if you are in those situations, then it is great. As long as that guide is written by someone trustable, you are good to go. But the problem is that many of us, many times, we are not in that perfect scenarios. So the guides made for optimal results in those perfect scenarios will actually give suboptimal results in our own situation. I think the best way to explain this is to give some simple examples. For example, warriors have an ability called Rend that puts a bleed effect on target that does a really small amount of damage over time and scales quite poorly. When you watch or read a guide, you will constantly hear that Rend is used to prevent classes who can stealth from doing so, as bleeds cannot be removed unless you're a dwarf, and in general, damage-wise, you are not meant to use it. And this is true. But again, it is true when you're on the second half of the expansion or generally really good geared, because then your abilities hit so hard and crit so often, Rend becomes virtually meaningless damage-wise. But let's look at some numbers where I try to record in an environment that mimics current PvP, a normal difficulty Black Morass dungeon with no melee boosting buffs, and I am wearing my starter level PvP gear. Let's look at the damage of Mortal Strike first. I was able to hit 715 damage on average and crit for 1602. To make the calculations a little bit more fair on the Mortal Strike, I will consider that I crit 22% of the time and even ignore the early resilience damage reduction from the crits. That makes it so the average damage from each Mortal Strike is about 910 damage for the cost of 30 rage. Now let's check Rend. It ticks for 59 damage on average, and 7 times 59, as it ticks for 7 times in 21 seconds, ends up doing 413 damage for only 10 rage. So when we compare them on damage per rage basis, you can actually see that while Mortal Strike does about 30 damage per rage, Rend is doing 41 damage per rage. So in my case, Rend is actually a useful ability also for damage, unlike many guides would suggest. Another example I would like to give is the best in slot list for Retribution Paladins. Almost all of them have close to zero intellect on them, as it does not affect the damage output directly, and suggested gear is basically the mix of warrior and maybe rogue gear. Because again, the best in slot list assumes that you are playing in an environment that you have all the raid buffs, Seal of Wisdom on targets, and you are constantly popping mana potions and runes. But many times you won't be in that perfect situation, and you may not want to constantly use mana potions or runes which cost a lot of gold or time to grind. The result of this is you will have barely 4000 mana, you will go out of mana extremely fast, damaging your both total damage output in fights that goes a little bit longer and fun playing with the class. We can give many more examples here, such as most warrior PvE guides will assume the warrior have Windfury totem with him, therefore plenty of rage. Or guides for any mana intensive class will assume they have a Shadow Priest in their party providing a lot of extra mana. But I think you got the point. Guides are great, and we are all grateful to people who put their time in it to create and publish them, as long as they are actually experienced in the topic and put the work to research it. But remember that guides are just suggestions that assume you are in certain, mostly ideal environments for your class. So when following guides, always consider how close your own situation is to assumed environment and experiment with it to check if that guide actually leads you to a better experience or not. I hope this video helped you out, and if you want to help the channel out, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.